Welcome to the Contagious Code Podcast, where we dive deep into code, learn practical skills, celebrate the beauty of engineering, and eliminate imposter syndrome.
I'm Tejas Kumar, and I've been building on the web for over 20 years at places like Vercel, Spotify, Zeta, and more. Today on the podcast, I'm joined by my good friend Svenja Schäfer. Svenja is a team lead at Thoughtbot, a digital consultancy. Svenja is also a leader in her organization and in the tech space in and around testing, pair programming, team dynamics, and last but certainly not least, regular expressions, sometimes called RegEx or RegEx. In our discussion today, we talk about all those things. We talk about testing and the right time and place for testing. This is a nice complement to our episode that we did previously with Artem Zakharchenko. If you haven't listened to that, we'll maybe put a link in the show notes. Testing, team dynamics, where Svenja outlines her 3-question framework on when to engage in a discussion with a teammate and not get distracted from work. And finally, we go deep on regular expressions. We actually, for the first time on the Contagious Code podcast, have a live coding session fully on audio where she coaches me through understanding a somewhat convoluted, maybe to some of you basic, regular expression. So if you're interested in avoiding distractions or having healthy team dynamics or testing and knowing when to test, should you end-to-end test, etc., or understanding the secret sauce behind regular expressions, this episode is for you. We'll put links, by the way. Svenja wrote a 4-part blog post, or rather 4 blog posts about regular expressions. We'll put all those links in the show notes as well. I'd love to offer this to everybody at zero cost, but this is in fact separate to my day job. The way we can keep things zero cost is with sponsors. That's why I'm proud to thank them in this section. The Contagious Code podcast is partnered with Code Crafters. Code Crafters is a great learning place where their way of teaching you how to code is to have you re-implement things like Git and Docker and other like Redis from scratch in a programming language that you prefer, like TypeScript or Python or whatever it may be. And by re-implementing these things from scratch, you understand the mechanisms while also upgrading your level of experience with these programming languages. So if you'd like to give that a try, go to tej.as/codecrafters. And then when you start paying, you get 40% off. That's almost half price, right? And of course, they have a free tier if you want to use that as well, tej.as/codecrafters. The Contagious Code podcast is also a continued partner of that conference. They have conferences twice a year in Wisconsin and in Texas. If you'd like to win a free ticket to any of those conferences or get the chance to win one, then share this episode on social media and mention like I'd like to win a ticket to so-and-so conference, and we'll give that away randomly. And then finally, the Contagious Code podcast is partnered with Stately.ai. Stately is a visual builder that helps you understand the flow of logic through your applications, through state machines or state charts. So you draw a diagram of how your application behaves, each state it can be in, and the transitions between those states. And then you can export this to JSON, where all of that is modeled for you, and you just fill in the business logic. So you describe the how it goes from state A to state B, but all of it's already there in code. If you'd like to give that a try, go to stately.ai. This has been fun, listing out the sponsors. Thanks for sticking around. And now for my discussion with Svenja Schäfer. Svenja Schäfer, it's so good to see you and catch up with you again. Thanks for coming on Contagious Code Podcast.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited. Yeah.
I'm so excited to see you. Last time we met, it was at Code Motion, I believe in Milan, a very, very large conference. You were one of the speakers, and you spoke about regular expressions. So today we'll get into regular expressions, and obviously because you talked about it, and a number of other things. But before we get started, maybe we could talk a little bit about you and who you are. We could give the listeners a little bit of an intro to you. You're a development team lead at Thoughtbot. We could talk about that. We could talk about, I know you have some type of pet, a dog, a cat. You live in Spain. So without, we have plenty of time, so let's do a nice introduction to you so that the listeners know and understand you and your background and your experience, and then we can dive into the topics.
Thank you so much, of course. So my name is Svenja Schäfer. I live in Spain, that's correctly. We met at Code Motion in Madrid, where I talked about regular expressions and actually also about my 2 dogs. I do have 2 dogs. One of them is reactive, and how regular expressions can actually help
I remember that.
making them less reactive. Regular expressions are useful, and I kind of like them a lot. So I'm looking forward to talk about that. And yes, I am a development team lead at Thoughtbot. It's my absolute dream job.
Wow.
And yeah, my background is very diverse, I would say. So I entered the tech field, I would say, in 2016, maybe, with a boot camp. And before that, I did all kind of different things. So I have a background in design, and but I wanted to do something that not everybody could say they can do. Having another background in journalism, everybody said, "Oh well, I can write as well." Maybe that's true, but becoming mostly a back-end developer, people couldn't say that like that. Oh yeah, I can do it as well. No, you can't. So well, maybe, but that was the motivation behind that. And why Thoughtbot, for example, is my absolute dream job. When I entered, I think, so people using Ruby and Rails, they know about Thoughtbot because we have a huge open source community. So we have FactoryBot. I'm not sure if you know that, or is the equivalent kind of for JavaScript is Fishery. So we are testing is very important to me, and there's a what is it? Not a difference, but when it's together. Sorry, I'm German.
Synergy?
Usually.
That's okay.
Yeah,
No, that's fine.
maybe. Testing and regular expressions.
Yeah.
When you know do both things, you become more confident, and I think it's especially nowadays it's important to become confident. So yeah, and we care about diversity and all that. So it's not only on paper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not just virtue signaling, but you also see that in action.
Yeah. I think that's a big difference. So I had different jobs, and it's kind of the first time that it's actually they hold the word. If
Wow.
you can say that, yeah.
You can.
So,
Yeah, that's a little bit unfortunate that it's the first time, but given since when did you start at Thoughtbot? Just so we can see how long it took you to find
roughly
for the first time.
Roughly 2 years.
Okay, so from 2016 when you started till 2022, wow, that's 6 years of trying to find the right fit, and unfortunately companies don't. I hear that. I've also had jobs where it's just, now obviously I'm not that much of a minority because most of tech is Indian people at this point in time. However, in Europe and North America, it's still, not a majority, absolutely. And so I can sort of relate to that. And I think we do need to do better. But let's talk about Thoughtbot. Thoughtbot, what does it do? You mentioned you work with Rails and you have the open source presence and project. But my best understanding is Thoughtbot is a consulting agency. And because it's a consulting agency, you have like a broad spectrum of different clients and different use cases. I'm assuming mostly with Ruby on Rails. But does that then lend itself well to testing? I have to imagine it does, right? Because when you deliver something to a client, you want it to be robust. You want to have confidence that the client's not going to come back like 1 week later and go, "Oh, it exploded."
Yeah, that's right. So yes, we do have lots of clients and projects in Ruby and Rails, but also JavaScript, React, and React Native. Which I find quite interesting, and I'm always open to learn more and new technologies. And testing not only makes it better or more robust for the project itself and for the stakeholders, but also for other developers, right? So when you get onboarded on a new project, right, and you have a good test suite with end-to-end tests, with unit tests, and it's so much easier to actually understand what's going on, especially when it's a new technology. And so I definitely use TDD. It was
Which is
so
test-driven development for the new people.
I'm sorry, test-driven development. It's faster. So people do write tests, but very often they write it after they wrote the implementation of the features. And I don't do that. So I first write the test, and it saves time, definitely. And it was very difficult for me to move to React Native, and although we use TypeScript, and personally I really like TypeScript because it helps me catching errors, and especially when there are not that many tests. So and the test suite was not that large or that big, and it was I don't know, I just got the impression that test-driven development is more a thing for Ruby and Rails developers than it is for JavaScript developers. So I would really like to hear your opinion about that, but I just I had that feeling.
No, it's true, and I can tell you why. And I can tell you, I don't necessarily think it's right. To be fair, I don't think anything is right. It's really what works for the team. But I think your feeling there is totally accurate, because in JavaScript we have a really fast feedback loop. So now it's in a stage where we have like build tooling and test runners and stuff. But like those of us who started JavaScript early, and that's sort of I was a kid when I started JavaScript, and we all sort of grew up, and now we work in it, and we got used to just writing a string in a .html file in a script tag, and it just runs. And not only does it run, you have access to the DOM, so the web page, and you can bring up a dialog with alert, or you could do prompt and get user input, and then it just works. And so this feedback loop is so fast without any tests, because like I write code, I run in the browser instantly, it works. There's no build step, there's no compile step, it's an interpreted language, it just works. And so when you get used to a feedback loop like that, and somebody shows up and says, wait, but write tests, you're like, why? Everything's working. What are you talking about? And so we have grown up with the mindset of like, this thing works on my machine, it's great, I'm a great programmer, I don't need to make sure it works on every machine, and I think that's sort of why.
I hear that, and I absolutely feel that. Yeah, definitely. And it's true. Funny thing is, before so of course I didn't use test-driven development from day one, right? And I must say it was a lag in again, I did a boot camp. The focus was not on testing, which is kind of sad, because again, testing gives you confidence, and I needed lots of confidence. So I wish there would be more focus on testing and helping people out there.
You said, sorry to interrupt you. You
No,
said
don't worry.
you didn't start testing from day zero or day one. Maybe we can talk about where you did start testing, because this is what I want the listeners to. I bet you there's thousands of listeners at this point going like, I also don't test. And they hear you. We had another guest on the show called Artem, and he's like the testing guy. Like he's doing a lot of workshops and stuff with Epic Web, specifically for testing. And even he constantly says you have to test from day one. It's better. You make better applications, and they work. And with testing, you can actually assert that they actually work? Because our definition of working usually means on my machine. And he's like, no, that's not what working means. Working means it works every time, everywhere. And so he says the same thing. And so my thesis is that there's people listening now going, okay, I want to. Where do I start? How do I start? How did you start? And where did you and testing intersect? And then where did you become like convinced of the value of testing?
That's a good question. I think it was always in the back of my mind, and coming back just very quickly to the how did you call it? To the loop. Sorry.
Yeah, the feedback loop. Yeah.
The feedback loop. Yeah. So when I had to debug, and of course every developer needs to debug at one point, and I always use puts statement, like printing to the console, which is similar to console log in JavaScript. And so I was a puts debugger. There's an amazing blog post about it as well. So I didn't feel alone. I didn't feel alone about it. And then I said, there must be a way to catch this before. So to slow down. So when I worked for a different agency, and there's an open source project called Decidim in Spanish. It's a participatory framework. When you get the task to build a feature, thinking about how does it affect the rest of the application? What do they actually want? Are there any criterias so the stakeholder know it's done or not? And then to show to estimate it, and just to get brain around what do they actually want, to just take a step take a step back, and slowing down, and instead of writing the feature right away, start thinking, oh, well, what do I actually need to achieve? It resulted in so I didn't need to debug more often. I was able to deliver faster, and another big thing was actually FactoryBot. So it's a testing framework from Thoughtbot, and it was so much joy to use it, and
So coming back to the question, when did you? So you did this bootcamp in 2016, I believe.
2016.
And they didn't have testing, and so it was until you started using the Thoughtbot testing framework that you discovered the joy of testing.
Yes, and so the first bootcamp was a Ruby and Rails bootcamp, and it was online. And then I went to Amsterdam and did a JavaScript bootcamp in person.
Which one was better?
They were both okay. So I'm happy that I started with Ruby and Rails, but there was this thing. There's so much magic going on in Ruby and Rails. So you can spin up a website in 15 minutes and it's done.
Wow.
It works. It's just like, it's amazing. But very often you don't know why it works. Then I moved to JavaScript. And hell, it didn't work at all because I had no clue what I'm doing.
Right.
And for that, then I just I started to ask, why is it working like this? And that's that's exactly what testing gives me, right? So why, what does it affect? Which parts of the application gets affected by this new feature? And yeah,
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
after that,
For somebody wanting to pick up testing, listening to this, who now feels really guilty for not testing their apps, what would you say is the best way to get started? Would it be, find a test runner and play? Or is there something more practical? Is it literally, because what I think anybody at this point in time, at least in the JavaScript world, could run something like npx vtest, and that will already like run some tests. Is that the best way to get started, or can we draw on your experience and like sort of extract a pathway to get started with testing?
I would say fine. So it depend. I would say it depends on the language. So
Yeah.
I speak for Ruby and Rails. And for me, it was just like helpful to have a great community. And the community is great. And then find a tool. So you can use RSpec, you can use Minitest. So I would say, and JavaScript is great testing. You just had a podcast, session with Ken, which is great. So I would start drastically to not write any feature without a spec. Try to do test-driven development.
Yeah.
And from that, because it can feel very intimidating when I said, but I don't have time for that. I need to build the feature. I need to deliver. There's this called from the outside in. So you write a test for the outer layer. So what you want to do, and then you soon hit the you soon hit a failing spec because something is not implemented. So you move to a unit test, and I would also very much suggest to do pairing on that, and then have this ping pong pairing style, for example. So one writes a spec, the other, which is failing, of course, and your pairing body makes it pass and writes the next spec. And it's always nicer to work in pairs. And yeah, so for Ruby on Rails, I would definitely say to check out FactoryBot for JavaScript, Fishery, which
awesome. Great.
nice.
Thank you. I love this ping pong style. I can share early in my career, I worked on a team. I was very early career, right? I didn't know much about testing and so on. And I worked on a lot of front-end JavaScript stuff that was untested. And I would look at the status of my commits when we pushed. There was a Jenkins pipeline that ran tests and so on. Now, all my things had absolutely no tests. So every time I pushed a feature and opened a pull request, it was always green because my stuff was completely untested. And every time my colleagues pushed stuff, sometimes it was red, as in CI, ran tests and it was red. And I thought, wow, I must be such a great engineer because my stuff is always green, but these guys, they push something and it breaks always. And I used to, like early in my career, I used to think that a failing test is a bad test. And what I learned now is a failing test is actually good, right? Because it shows you something is missing. Either the entire implementation is missing and then you get to start filling in the blanks, or you broke some part of the application you were not expecting to break. And both of those can be so valuable.
It's exactly that. So I'm always so happy about when something fails, because it's just like either it's expected, and a valuable point is don't ever assume something.
Yeah.
Don't trust your assumptions. I think that's something I wish I would have learned earlier in my career, because very often, it works like this, but are you 100% sure? Do you have a test for that? Oh no, but it works like that. I said, yeah, I don't trust it. If you don't have a test for it, if you're scared to write a test, no, then don't. Exactly.
This is really also extremely common in open source projects. For example, if you wanted to contribute to like React, or Fisher, if that's open source, or whatever it may be, usually what I've seen is you cannot actually contribute a feature to an open source project unless you also add an appropriate test. And so I think really it's just a skill for anybody to learn so that they can even participate in open source if and when they choose. Okay, let's talk about Ruby on Rails. The listenership of this podcast is mostly, I'd say, JavaScript, TypeScript engineers, and so this will be really interesting. Because I don't have any hands-on experience with Rails. I back in the day I had more of a PHP background for server-side stuff. And in PHP you've got some frameworks. You've got Symfony, you've got Laravel, you've got I believe Zend. There's a number of different things. I worked with Symfony, so I have to assume. And again, I'm someone who's never used Rails. Rails is a framework for Ruby, which is a server-side language, very similar to PHP. And Rails gives you a framework to build websites and web applications with like probably server-side primitives like form response things like post and put, and you can build APIs, and then you can use those to statically generate HTML and CSS and even JavaScript if you want, and that outputs a page from the server. Is that accurate? Is that a fair
That's pretty perfect. Yeah.
Cool. I just
welcome to the Rails world.
Thank you. Yeah, I just said instead of PHP, I just swapped the word for Rails, and everything's literally the same. This is quite cool because, like, I think this is an important point for the listeners to know. Everything is the same in engineering, right? I see you nodding. What's your take?
I love that. Yeah, I have no clue about PHP. But I touched a little bit of Python, for example, and I also touch a bit of Elixir, which for me is the most beautiful language ever, just like from the syntax. I do think everything is the same, and when it makes click, at one point, it doesn't matter if you start today, if you start tomorrow. At one point, it will make click. You know what happens and why it happens. Sometimes it takes longer. Writing tests will help you reaching that point earlier, I have to say. But at one point it makes click, and then it doesn't matter if you are a Rails developer, if you are a JavaScript developer, if you work with Go, with Elixir, whatever. If you know how it works, you can switch languages. Of course, there are differences, but.
The way I see it is it's exactly the same as communication in the real world, not in the matrix, right? Because like you and I could speak German for the rest of this podcast, and cool. It's like some people may not understand, but it's just a different way of doing the same thing, which is communicating and sharing ideas. So I love this idea of everything's the same. I'm glad you agree. Okay, so Ruby on Rails, similar. And there's a lot of, in the front-end world now, or in the JavaScript world, there's a bit of a meme going around because we had, in 2013, the React was introduced. And before that, we had AngularJS and all these things. And everything was client-side only. So everything ran in the browser. And now the best advice from the people who make React, the experts, are no more client-only stuff. You need to server render, and you need to write JavaScript and React on the server side and have it generate an HTML string and then stream that to the browser. So basically what Rails is doing, what PHP is doing, JavaScript is basically the same as Rails now, with Next.js being the equivalent of Rails. I'm curious if you have any thoughts about that, because we've had the way of doing this for so many years, and now it feels almost like JavaScript has caught up. And you mentioned you've done some React and React Native as well. How does this all fit together?
Good question. I always struggle. So I prefer to stay on the back end, I must say.
Yeah.
So I like to write the API so front-end developers can use it, and to make it safe and secure, and Yeah. And then moving to the front end, well, not moving completely, but also working on the front end. And in a previous job, I mainly worked with React and GraphQL and all that. It's just, it's tricky for me. It was very tricky. And I was like, I don't know a lot about it. And it's like,
Yeah.
I would like to know everything, but where to start? So
Yeah.
for me, where I started then was documentation. So I tried to read the documentation, but the world is changing so fast. And what worked yesterday, just like speaking
Yeah.
about Next.js, right? And all the changes. Like, I remember when I tried to implement fonts in a Next.js project, it took hours because
Yeah.
I was missing a dot, and it was just like it wasn't the correct path. And yeah, now you just can spin it up in seconds, and
Yeah.
it's all there. And I'm not sure if I like that, to be
Yeah.
honest. These fast changes, and I would prefer to make a language or multiple languages more robust instead of, oh yeah, I need to jump on that train as well. I need to jump on
Yeah.
that train as well. And
Yeah. I think you bring up
yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
yeah. No, I just think like we lose people on the way. Yeah.
That is such a good take. I fully agree. In fact, I will say this: React is losing people
Yeah.
because of this shift to the server side. Because it started as just actually, I could say a lot about this. I'll try not to because the listeners prefer listening to the guests than to me. But like React started as like, here's a library to make your little contact form interactive, but the whole rest of your page is static. It's just HTML and CSS. That was, as far as I know, the intention, right? So you have like your website is like an ocean of static content, and you have a little reactive island here and there. Instead, over time, I don't know how this happened, we ended up with this thing called SPAs, or single page applications, where like the whole page is JavaScript, and you go, why, how did this happen? And now we're back to where, okay, this was a bad idea, so let's move things to the server and generate it. Have you heard of HTMX, just in terms of talking about things that move really fast?
No.
Okay, it's
I want to know about it.
It's a good question. I think for somebody who works mostly on the back end side, it's the best way. I will say this on the podcast. It's the best way to make a website like generated with Rails interactive, because you don't have to write JavaScript at all. This is the beauty of HTMX. It's an extension of HTML. So you include like one script tag, and then HTML gets some special attributes that can make elements interactive. So you can add event, you can do like on click, and when you click on this button, then make a network request there, and when you get a response, swap out this other element. It all becomes very declarative through HTML. And it's a great way to never write JavaScript, but get the same interactivity using something like Rails.
Yeah, but do you want that? I mean, that's what I mean, right? What's the reason why don't you want to write JavaScript if you write for the web, right? If you code for the why? What yeah, why is that? So
that's a really good. So what I'm hearing is you see value in like just learn the languages and use them, and we don't need like all of this extra decoration. Is that accurate?
Yeah. And I mean, that might also be I don't know, a spicy take. But when I worked on React Native and just for example React Native, and in the bootcamp for example, they where you learned, it was another one, where you learned about React, MongoDB, and then there was one section about React Native. And just like, yes, you can do all these things with writing JavaScript, right?
Yeah.
But what's the price for that?
Yeah.
Why don't you learn Kotlin and Swift? Why don't you make it robust again? Is the Android phone, is the iPhone, whatever, are they made for React Native, or are they made for to have apps written in Kotlin and Swift?
Yeah. I think this is a really great discussion and a really compelling point, right? And I think if we extrapolate from that, because React Native is an abstraction on top of Kotlin and Swift, similar to how React itself is an abstraction on just native DOM APIs, I can see the reason for React being DOM APIs are just very, very difficult. Like native, and so for example, if you read the width of an element, it will trigger the browser to like recalculate the entire layout of the page. You're just reading a property. And so it's very easy. And of course, like recalculating layout is very expensive computationally. So when you use React, the React engineers give you a function and you declaratively call this, and they make sure none of that like de-optimization happens. But I hear you. Why not just learn these things instead of leading on a library? And I think really it's just because in the capitalistic society we live in, when you move really fast, you ship things and you get a lot of money. And I think that's the big disincentive, right? Like it's going to take a really long time to learn Swift and Kotlin if your team is proficient in JavaScript. Whereas if you just use React Native, you can ship fast, get money, and that's why most people are in the business anyway.
But maybe it's just for a couple of years, right? Until something else comes out. So for example, make the life faster. Like reduce the time you need a developer, because a developer needs to get paid. So then you use Expo.
Yeah.
But then, but you will hit the borders when you use Expo quite soon. And then, maybe that was not the best idea. And then you kind of need, it's the same like pairing. So some people think pairing, you need to pay two developers for the same time, which is not true, because you're way faster when you code in pairs, because you have two brains at the same time, and you reduce errors and bugs and all that.
I would love to see an experiment that tracks the reliability of software over time when one person works on it versus when two. This would be such a cool, and by over time I mean you work on a feature as a solo developer, and then another group works on a feature, maybe the same feature, as two people, and you just see how it runs for like 6 months, right? And then you come back and go like, look, the solo developer, it broke 3 times, and they had to debug and they had to adjust it, and this is just a hypothesis, but like I'm a huge fan of science, and this sounds like a really great like empirical way to prove actually pairing is better. I have a friend who works at Volkswagen, and the digital innovation team at Volkswagen, they have a policy where it's only pairing all the time on everything, and they start with TDD, and they literally will spend, and it's such an interesting working arrangement, because my friend who works there, I can't like text him during work hours because he's like, I don't have time to look at my phone, I'm with someone constantly. And then they go out to lunch together as a pair because it's like they have literally the same schedule. And so for the team, it's actually quite good. I'm assuming for the software it works. And also he's less likely to sort of slack off at work because he's always with his partner. I don't know. I haven't seen that model anywhere else. I'm curious if you have, and what you think of maybe trying that out, or if listeners try it out.
So yes, we pair a lot. Like whole collaboration is important. I'm sure there are experiments out there. So and so yes, we do it. I think I could not, and I'm not sure I agree on having it 100%. Because I do think the brain needs some time to reset from time to time. And as important as pairing is, so important is taking breaks. How often was it that when I, maybe even in a pairing session, that we were just like blocked and we said, okay, we tried this, we tried that, it's not working. Let's meet in 20 minutes. I need to go outside, take a walk. And then, oh yeah, as soon as I was on the street, I said, oh yeah, sure, just do this. How often comes the ideas and the solutions when after work? And there's a reason for that, right? Because when you're constantly staring at the screen, it won't help. It won't help.
Yeah.
So when it comes to pairing, I think it's important to have some rules to do it. So for me, optimal pairing won't take longer than like one session, as maybe 40 minutes. And you define a clear goal. What's the goal of this pairing session, like of the next 40 minutes? And have this very clear and both both people agree on the goal. Make a clear cut after 40 minutes, take a break after 40 minutes, and then also define who is driving. So I think this is important, just not to blank out, like you said, as well, right? I mean, and change it, and then, for example, having the ping pong style if you use TDD. So we do that quite often. Yeah.
Okay, at Thoughtbot, that's good to hear. Yeah. I think this may be even valuable for remote teams, right? Because like if you're working, I've had experiences where I'm working in a fully remote environment, and I don't see my coworkers at all. I don't get the chance to look them in the eye, and I very quickly after this communication breaks down, and people start like assuming intentions, and usually they're not good, and then they go like, "Why are you saying that?" And in a pull request, there's people start to think this is hostile or whatever, just because they haven't got that FaceTime. I don't know if Thoughtbot is remote or not, but I have to assume okay, so it is
100% remote. Yeah, and I must say I always work remote since I'm in tech.
Right.
Like all the years. Yeah.
Would you say then the pairing does also help cultivate a sense of belonging in the team more so than just like heads down like solo work?
Oh, absolutely. And also like an open and honest communication. And it's so important to be aware what you, especially in written communication, don't make assumptions, ask questions. And there's nothing better than asking questions. How do you mean that? I don't understand that. Could we do it like this? Did you? Yeah, I just, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about regular expressions. That's why we're here. So we talked about testing and how testing is so important, how you can move faster with tests, how testing is this sort of like pre-compile step. And again, to reiterate from the beginning, like JavaScript developers historically on the web have not been the best testers, at least I haven't, because we never had a pre-compile step. It's an interpreted language. You make it up as you go. But now with TypeScript, we're starting to love the pre-compile step, right? Because you catch the errors before time. Wow, what a concept. And so I do see like everybody is getting better at testing. So we talked about testing being this beautiful mechanism by which you can make robust software. And you said, when you know testing and when you know regular expressions, that's a superpower. So I'd love it if you could dive into that a little bit more. But before that, I have an extremely important question about regular expressions, which is it RegEx or RegEx?
Oh my gosh, I would just like say regular expressions. Or sometimes I also just like say RegEx. Where does the peak? Yeah, sometimes like the, I don't know, it's not the acronym, like, but when you shorten, do you say regex or do you say regexp? Because some people say regexp and I can't. I just like regex or regular expressions and
Yeah.
yeah.
In JavaScript,
Dot
for what it's
star.
worth,
Just
we
say
have
dot star.
In JavaScript we have a global class given to us from the runtime, and this is called regexp. So
See? Yeah.
yeah, maybe that's the blessed one. Anyway, okay, so regular expressions. Can we talk about their importance and how maybe they accelerate robustness in testing when used with testing?
I didn't mean it in regards to testing, but I meant it like in regards to the developer's confidence. So because everybody thinks, oh my gosh, how can somebody actually like regular expressions? I mean, what's wrong with you? So they're so simple, it's just like they're way simpler than anything else, and it's pure logic. I mean, it's, other people say, well, migrations or database queries, everything. Oh, that's logic. Yeah, no, don't think so. Don't agree. But regular expressions are so fun. And again, you can use them and they are most of the time independent from the language you're using it in. So you use regular expressions in PHP, you use them in Ruby, you use them in JavaScript. Doesn't matter if you know the rules and if you know, regular expressions, you can use them and there's a whole new world. I'm so excited about regular expressions. I don't know. It's, gosh, they are great. They look scary and maybe that's why I like them, because they are not. Yeah.
So you wrote a really long blog post on regular expressions, just sort of declaring your love for it. We'll put a link to that in the show notes. And I think all the listeners and I can hear it now. Like you just really are into this. And you said maybe you're into it because it's scary, but it's actually not. What are some things about regular expressions that make you go, this is perfect? And I have to believe it's probably showing its value in things like email address validation. This is where we use regular expressions, or maybe date time format validation. Some people are working on like programming language parsing, where the tokenization step happens with regular expressions. So can we speak to maybe some use cases that make you go, wow, regular expressions are so cool because they enable these?
Well, yeah, as you said, for example, email validation. So is it a valid email address, right? But when I'm not sure if you remember, but the talk.
Yeah, you had the slide in your talk, the huge, like, impossible out of the page regular expression. Yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah. Regular expression can become used and you can't really read them, but same as for what is a valid email address. This is a whole different topic, right? I mean, when you go to Wikipedia, for example, and check valid email addresses, you don't believe it. You would not believe what's valid and what not. But yeah, for example, for that, just like validate against it. Also, for example, use any kind of user input for a form, like match that the password, for example, they enter, match a pattern you want them to use. There must be a lowercase, a number, a symbol, whatever. You could use regular expressions for that. Very often I use Visual Studio Code as my editor. When you open Visual Studio Code, you have a way to, so you will find the dot and the asterisk when you search. So very often I use regular expressions just for the fun of it, to find for something in my projects in Visual Studio Code. And yeah, it's also something sometimes like a secret language I just use. And yeah.
That's so cool. Let's talk a little bit. So now I'm sure we've got everybody. Your your passion for. So, by the way, this podcast is called Contagious Code for many reasons. One of them is we have guests who sometimes really love things, and we want that passion for their topic to be so contagious that I catch it and all the listeners catch it. And so I've sort of caught on to your regular expression thing now, and I'm sure the listeners have. So okay, let's assume everybody's really into regular expressions. What are some of the like pieces of a regular expression? What do they mean? How does one write one? And the reason I'm asking this is because I so appreciate and respect your your 4 blog posts about this, where you talk about, for example, when you enter, take off your hat, right? And and the hat is this like caret, which means at the starting of a string. And similarly, you say, and correct me if I'm wrong, you say before you leave, pay. And so the dollar symbol means this is expected at the end of a string.
Exactly.
What are some other like, or maybe we could start there. Can we talk a little bit about the sort of parts, the building blocks of a regular expression?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't remember how I came up with it, but my other passion is food, maybe because of that. So I try to explain everything with food, and going to a restaurant, yes. Also, I try to find examples everyone can relate to. It doesn't matter if they have a technical background or not. And so, but the first rule, I think, not rule, but to take the fear of regular expressions is start at the very beginning. Well, start on the left side of the regular expression and don't care about anything else. Just like check the first character. And then you are able, it doesn't matter if the regular expression is 10 pages long or so, just check the first character and see what it is, and then continue to go like the engine does, right? The regular expression engine. It just goes character by character. It's not more intelligent than you. It just like knows that to start at the left side of the regular expression. And then, yeah, for example, going from that start to the start of a string, because it matches strings, if we didn't say that, you have the caret, which kind of looks like the hat character. It's also some people call it the hat character. Yeah. And I just like said, how can I bring this in relation to food? And so as the example I mentioned in the blog post is when you enter, when you're wearing a hat, I don't, but if you do and you are a polite person, you usually take it off at the beginning, right? And so you hang it there to wherever. So with that, before anything else, the hat is the starting point of your regular expression food experience. And that exactly means that the following character must be at the start of a string.
So can I make that really practical with a question here?
Go ahead.
If I do a regular expression with a caret or the hat, by the way, this looks exactly like one of those like farmer hats in like Southeast Asia. So if I do caret, and I do like JA. So this is a regular expression, caret JA. Would it then match all and if I give it a huge paragraph and I use the global and multi-line modifiers, then would it match like Jackson, Javelin, JavaScript? Would it match every word starting with JA? Or this is, again, I'm asking this because I think the listeners are going to be like, okay, so you matched the start of a string. So yeah, maybe we can talk about how that.
Well, yeah. Again, so it just says that's the next character that follows is at the beginning of a string. So what comes after the hat or caret sign? So what do you have? So if you type then, for example, head character JavaScript, then it would match JavaScript, if it stands at the beginning of a line.
A string.
But yeah, exactly. But if not, it won't. match everything. Well, it won't match anything
Okay.
actually. It's
So if I
there,
do-
it's waiting for the next input.
So if I do then the hat, JA, and then a dot star in parentheses, that's a capturing group as far as I know. Would that
Yes.
then do what I want and match like
Yeah.
all the JavaScript and this and
Yeah.
that? Okay,
Because
cool.
but I wouldn't suggest that. But yeah, so the dot. No, I just like that because to play around with it, of course, but it would be very performant because, as you
I see.
said, why would you write a regular expression to match everything? I mean, there's a reason why you want to. Then you don't need a regular expression at all, right? You want to find something, and what you want to do with regular expression is to be as explicit as possible, because yes, regular expressions are not the most performant way to do any kind of process. But
So then how would I match any word starting with JA? If it's not like the caret and then a capturing group that goes until the end of the word.
or you can just like JA.
Just JA?
You could, so if you want to match, you do want to match the whole word.
That
Okay.
starts with JA, right?
Let's start with JA. So you start like JA, and then you could use the word boundaries. So you reduce it, and yeah.
And
You
that's
could also
what's the character for word boundaries? Because we know the
It's
hat
a-
is for the starting.
it's a /B.
Okay, and that says like match this first two characters with the rest of a word.
You need to. Sorry, no, I really need to. You can use the word you can use the word character, which is / and W.
Okay.
That would mean that matches every alphanumeric character. If you want to use only alphabetic characters, you could use, for example, square brackets, which
With A to Z.
defines defines a range.
Yeah.
You must be careful not to put the hat character inside the range, though, because that would match everything that's not inside this group, inside this range. So then it comes to that. And then you probably want to have a multiplier. So there's the star in the dot and star or asterisk symbol you just mentioned, which would match everything. There's a plus sign and the plus symbol, the plus multiplier, the question mark, and the asterisk, and they all mean different kinds of. Is it optional? Is it minimum, 0 and like indefinite, or is it just like asterisk is? It's all possible. So
Right.
the dot just means everything but only once, and then the asterisk means it's either there or not, or in like over 10,000 pages. Yeah.
Okay. So if I wanted to match every word starting with the letters J and A in a like 10,000 word article, what would the regular expression be? You mentioned I start with JA, first of all, but why am I not starting with the hat here, for example? Oh, you're actually like trying it like right now?
Oh yeah, I would
wow.
definitely try that. Let's
This is
try
so
that.
cool.
Can we try that? So I just opened on my other screen now.
Sure. This is so
have
wow. This is the first time we have like live coding in an audio podcast where people can't really see anything, but we're
I'm
just
so
doing
sorry.
some value.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Let's just like
This-
open just like.
Yeah. What are you
there's
doing
nice-
actually? Because for people who want to play with are you going to regex101.com? Is that the
For
website?
example, yeah. I really like 101 regex, and there's another is but the beauty about regex101.com is you can
Yeah.
share it. right? And you have at the top, you can set a flavor if you want to. Don't you?
A
And
flavor.
like it's a language you want to match it against, because again there are some differences how you capture groups, how you call these groups and all that. But don't worry about that. Just like start simple, seriously. I mean,
Yeah.
and then you have the regular expression at the top, and below that there's a test string. So we want to have JavaScript, for example, in the first line. Then we have Java. We also have Go, which we don't want to match.
Okay, so you're adding negative examples.
Yeah, definitely.
And-
because you need that, right?
What about let's add Jesus.
Jesus? Yes.
And Jackson, right? We want to match on Jackson.
Jackson.
And of course, you want it to be case insensitive, so we'll use the I modifier. This is the sign
Yes.
off.
Yes,
So
right.
cool. This is so cool. I this is why I have the podcast. I get like free education, not just me, but like all the listeners who are wanting to learn about
And
RegEx.
then we want to have, we said we want to only match at the start. So
Yeah.
I have the test string, and I have JavaScript, Java, Go, Ruby,
Okay.
Jesus, Jackson in
So-
single lines.
So for
And then
listeners, if you want to validate a good regular expression, step 0, write a test string or have some corpus of text that you can test it against, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. Great.
And open RegEx 101.
Oh,
to-
101.com. Yeah. Maybe when you're finished with this, we can get the share link for this and put it
Yeah.
in the show notes. Okay,
Let's
we'll
do
do
that. We can also, well, if you don't want to use RegEx 101 for whatever reason, you can also open your favorite editor and just do that.
Yeah.
So that's what I was like. So we match when you then type when you then use the head character, and it says you always have an explanation for that right on the screen. So it's like
That is
you
so
learn by doing it. So you type this, and then it says asserts, like the head character, asserts position at start of line. Amazing. And we do have the global pattern flags, the G for global and the M for multi-line. And then we said we want to have the J and A.
So you put at this point in time, your expression is a caret and J and A.
Exactly. So
Okay.
with that, I match the J and A in JavaScript, J
Good.
and A in Java, and the J and A in Jackson.
Cool. So it works.
With that, go Ruby Jesus out. All right.
So it totally works.
This is something fun. Yeah, but it doesn't. But you wanted to match the full word, right? The whole word, and I said like it's important to just like start at the very beginning. So with that, yes, you would match JavaScript and Jackson, but you don't
But
want.
would I match the whole word, or would I just
No.
match ja
No,
in both?
no,
Yeah,
you
so I just match the first
Ja-
two.
Exactly. So apart from the multipliers, like the question mark, star, plus, dollar sign as well, and the caret, they don't actually match characters in the test string, or in the string you want to validate.
Can I share?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was
Go
just going to share. This is my instinct, which is probably wrong and not perform. I love being wrong on this podcast. So what I would do if I wanted to match the whole word is I've got caret
ahead.
JA, and then
Type it while you're saving. Okay.
oh gosh, this is too much pressure. Okay, and then I would
No.
I'll do a capturing group, so a parenthesis with a dot star.
Yes.
But I know it's not performance, so what I would do is add like a word boundary at the end, or a way of, I don't know how to do this, to be fair, but I would find a way to say match every character until the end of the word, so until the first white space, and then stop. And that's what I'm hoping the word boundary does. I'm hoping \b is like match this only until the first occurrence of white space, and then stop. And then I would, of course, look at it and see if it matches. Does it match?
Okay, let me. So you want to have parentheses to match a group.
Yeah.
To have a group, yeah. And so, for example, it's also said first capturing group. Always find
Yes.
the zero links match. Okay, let's go. What do I put inside the
Dot star.
dot star?
This is so cool.
The dot, again, comes the explanation, matches any character
Yeah.
except for line terminators. And the star matches a previous token between 0 and unlimited times. That's what I meant, right? It can be there, it can't be there. If it's there, it can be infinite. Unlimited.
And by previous token here, we mean the dot, and the dot means any
Exactly.
character except new line. So it will match every character except a new line an infinite amount of times until a new line is encountered, which is not a match, and then it stops.
Exactly.
But we want to
match
not-
it.
Yeah, and so we want to match not until the new line, but until a space, a white space.
Exactly.
And so how do we, is the word break, is that the next? So I would do a \b here and hope for the best.
You could do. Let me check something.
This is so
Because I have the test string and I put everything in a new line. So
Yeah.
let me write 2 words after in one line. So we want to see, for example, after JavaScript, I have a space and I'm gonna write hello world, because why not? We know that, right?
Yeah.
So currently, I would match without with the capturing group, the dot and the star. I would match JavaScript hello world, which we don't want, Java, and Jackson. Interesting
Good.
though,
Yeah.
we also match every space, right?
Yeah.
So.
And that's because the dot includes.
Yes.
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 Oh, what if we could do? Okay, I see where this is going. What if instead of the dot now we use the character flag? So what is it? Backslash.
character, you mean?
The word one. Yeah. /W. Right.
Well, now I did something really interesting. No, I can't. The thing is, when you have a German keyboard, you
Yeah.
don't find the symbol and just try to find the backslash. It's hilarious.
Yes, I know this pain.
Yeah, but I can't work with any other. So that's what I mean. So now so what I did now, we have the character to define it must be at the beginning of a string. Then JA, which are literal characters. And then we have an open, a group.
Parentheses.
And inside that group, which is defined by the parentheses, we have the backslash and W, which stands for word character, which matches every alphanumeric character, apart from spaces. And then, apart from spaces, that's important. And after that, we have the unlimited multiplier, the asterisk. And with that, you're good to go. We're gonna,
Yes!
now gonna
That's
now
so
gonna match,
cool.
So JavaScript, Java, and Jackson, but not spaces.
I really suck at regular expressions. I'll say that
No, you
publicly.
don't.
And
Absolutely
well,
not.
after this conversation, I don't. I got all this literally just by listening to you and reading your 4-part blog post, like preparing for this episode. That's so cool. I agree with you. I feel like I can move way faster now that I know regular expressions, and I feel that I can move faster because of this search in Visual Studio Code with the regular expressions, and I can make it really practical, right? I work with subtitles and captions for this podcast, and I often have to go find typos, and I have to find weird line terminations and all kinds of, look, the podcast is run by a big army of AI agents, and sometimes they don't do the best job of transcribing and so on. And so I need to really clean up the transcript, and this helps enormously. So thank you. Basically, I feel so cool that I was able to match my own use case for the first JA of everything. That's so cool.
And for that, I also really have to thank Daniel Schiffman. If you look on YouTube or wherever, Daniel Schiffman has an episode about regular expressions, and I sat down one weekend and learned regular expressions in one weekend.
Wow.
Because this person is so amazing. He's very enthusiastic about it, and he has the website like a coding train, and I absolutely can recommend it, and I wouldn't have known regular expressions without this person. So
Daniel
shout out to
Schiffman.
Daniel Schiffman.
That is so
Absolute
cool.
hero. Seriously.
Absolutely love the shout out. Maybe we should get him on the podcast and
Yeah,
continue
please
the
do.
regular
It's-
expression party.
Yeah.
One of my friends wanted to. We had a use case. This is my coworker of 7 years at this point in time. Really, one of if not the best TypeScript engineers I know. Right? He had an interesting experiment he did once with regular expressions, where we were working with a backend. So we were doing front end with TypeScript, and we were working with a backend team that mostly worked in Go, and we needed to share code between the backend and the front end for some specific logic. However, most of this logic was expressed in Go, and we wanted some way to turn this into TypeScript. Now, for those listening, what I'm about to say, don't do this. The correct way to do this is to parse the Go, get an abstract syntax tree of objects that represent the tokens, and then, which is just, since it's a big bunch of nested objects, you can then transpile that into TypeScript. You can just map over the objects. That's the correct way. My friend did not do this. He just wrote a big set of regular expressions to match Golang syntax and replace it using regular expression replace with TypeScript syntax. And it was completely TDD, so test driven. It worked every single time. And when things didn't work, that's actually on GitHub right now. I'll put a link maybe in the show notes. It's called Go to DTS. And what it does is it takes Golang, literally any Golang source code, and will extract TypeScript.d.ts type definitions out of it. And it's basically just big regular expressions. So,
Oh my gosh, I really have to check that out.
yeah. And so this is just to share what people can actually do with regular expressions. Okay, let's wrap up the discussion with regular expressions. I want to talk about some gotchas, because as I was just pursuing my little experiment here with the JA, you mentioned just using like dot star to match everything is probably not performant. I assume that's one gotcha. What are some other cases where you can really get into trouble using regular expressions?
Good question. I think that's a main one. If you care about performance, and also always make sure about the goal of your regular expression, and try to be as explicit as possible. So if you want to match, I wouldn't use regular expression for that. If you want to match 1 to 3, just type 1 to 3, which would be an absolute valid regular expression. It can be that obvious, right? It can also, if you look for JavaScript, just search for the word JavaScript, But the Rails engine, the
regular expression engine.
Yeah, it wouldn't read JavaScript development again, right? Start at the beginning. It would read JA, VA, and so on. I would start learning. So definitely the different classes, like the character classes, like the word character. Then something that matches spaces, which would be backslash and s. Get familiar with the multipliers, like what does it mean to use a question mark or the asterisk, because this can be very tricky, right? So if you just want it to be matched maximum 2 times, you wouldn't use the asterisk.
What would you use? Would you use the curly brace and then the number 2?
For example, yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So really good. Really
so it's all complete guesswork.
Oh my
That's so cool.
No, that's just what you meant. The curly brackets also define a range. It can define a range. So it takes into 2 numbers. So up to 2
comma
numbers.
separated.
It can also, yeah, exactly. It can include only 1. So that would mean it matches it absolutely that number, or it can have 2 and 4, and then would we minimum match 2 times, maximum 4 times. Yeah.
Wow.
You can also use like the square brackets that we talked about, which could include a range. And it doesn't need to be numbers. It can also be like the alphabet. But again, be aware of the hat sign, because inside that explicit, but only inside that range, inside the square brackets, it would mean don't match this. Don't match what's inside this range. So it's kind of excluded. Yeah.
Can we talk about one final thing that's a big source of fear for me in regular expressions and probably the listeners? I have no idea. Okay, that's a lie. I have some idea, but I don't have the best idea of what is negative look ahead and positive look ahead. What that even means. Where would you use that?
People use it quite often, but everybody is scared about that.
I'm super scared.
It's not. It's just like if you want to find something. Okay, let's come up with an example. What do we... We want to find something that does not... So maybe we have some things that's always equal, apart from... I'm just trying to...
This is so cool. Well, maybe this tells us that there's no real good case for these things, if it's so hard to think of it.
Yeah, well, maybe it should always start with parentheses or whatever, apart from in one case. So you need to define, or you need to look what comes before the match. So you want to find something that's...
Could it be like, could one use case be where, for example, you have a string and you want to match on the string, but you want to make sure that the string doesn't start with specific words, right? For example, if you have a URL and you want to validate that it doesn't begin with HTTP or HTTP. So the case here is like, if you're like adding a link to a web page, href equals, and the user has input either, like twitter.com or https://twitter.com, then you could use a negative look ahead to go, okay, tell me if the string actually starts with HTTPS or not, and if it doesn't, then you add HTTPS, right? Is that a use case for that? So where you can validate.
Could. Yeah. Okay. I probably would use to look for HTTPS in general, if in the rest
at the beginning of the string.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, if it's there or not, and
This is why I'm scared of it. But it seems like it's not as common, and there's usually other ways around it.
I would say so.
Good. Good.
But don't be afraid of it. I should continue probably with the. It's a kind of rather old blog post you talked about, so I didn't finish it.
There were 4 parts. What do you mean you didn't finish it?
Yeah, I think I left something out, so maybe I will right now is the 5th part. Yeah, now I'm motivated to finish it, and I will.
Well, that's why this podcast exists. I'm so happy. Okay, well, let's switch a little bit and talk about team leadership. Look, you're a development team lead at Thoughtbot.
Yes.
We have some really great episodes with some really great leaders about leadership. For example, we have an episode with Jeff Escalante, who is the VP of engineering at Clerk. And he wrote this beautiful handbook for engineering managers where he talks about how management is a lateral move that doesn't involve coding. Now, obviously, management and being a team lead or a tech lead is different. Maybe we could start there. Are you a team lead or a tech lead? How does that fit with management? And then we can maybe talk about some practices to follow with a team that you lead to really help them do their best work.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really like talking about that because It's what am I? Who am I? I'm
The biggest irregular expression fan in the world.
absolutely. Um, I do code. I I wouldn't know. I don't say I'm in the first place a senior developer. I am a senior developer, and I am on client projects because we thought like Thoughtbot is an agency. We have different clients. I work as a developer. I don't like titles. Seriously, I don't think that we need the senior, the junior, but that's a different topic. So I'm a developer, and apart from that, I also support people in that are not per se in my project. So they work at different projects, but I help them to grow, to improve, and on different levels. So I am a development team lead because the people I support, they are developers. There could be designers as well because Thoughtbot, we also have designers and product managers. I don't, and I do manage them. So it's a management role, but I would never give up coding for that.
Yeah.
I think it's important to not give the one up for the other. It's more an extension on top of it.
Yeah. It's like coding plus coding plus
Yes.
people.
Yes. Yes. And I love that. It makes it easier if the person I support is in the same team because I see what's going on. I might be able to support them better. But I think it's important to have, so we conduct like one-on-ones. I have them weekly. I have weekly one-on-ones with my people, and I enjoy them so much. And
If you have a person you're supporting and for some reason, they seem unmotivated or they're not really giving anything, what's the strategy to support them? I mean, I've seen this go wrong in some environments, right? I've seen people going like, hey, do you need anything? And this, do you need anything, sometimes is interpreted as, why are you micromanaging me? So what, I have to believe you've been in a situation like that. Could you maybe speak to what has worked for you in such an environment?
I must say I celebrate everything, and what I celebrate a lot is if I see that anyone actually in the team, not only the people I am the team leader, but if they are honest, and I try to lead by example. So if I am unmotivated, if I don't feel good, I say that. And I say, I'm sorry, folks, I can't work today, for example. And then I take a day off. I say if I need breaks. And I would always come up. So my development director, Rob, he always says, like, come up with curiosity. And I think that's the best advice ever. Don't make assumptions, but just ask, what's going on? How are you feeling currently? How can I help you? And it's also say, don't ever fear, I won't micromanage you. If I can help you, if I can support you with something, it's good. And what I, sorry,
It's okay.
What I think is very important is, if you have folks that have anxiety about something, if something maybe production blew up. It always happens, right? Oh yeah, I somehow deleted the database. This was wonderful. I did not, but it's okay. We all learn from mistakes, and every mistake is it's good, and it's something to talk about and to discuss, and fixing the bug is something to celebrate as well. And what I mean is the most important thing is to take the fear of everything. So if there's something wrong, you give feedback, and every person around me can be sure that they get the feedback, positive and encouraging feedback if something could be improved.
Nice avoiding the word negative there. That's
because that negative, there's no negative feedback, because depending on how you phrase it, and you always should, the goal of feedback is to improve everybody's life, especially of the one who receives it, right? And it might be difficult to get feedback, but I think in 99% it's because the feedback is just shit, because it just didn't get delivered correctly or in a nice way. And
one time that's okay, we'll just mark it as explicit, it's fine. I once had a manager who, and I think this is important for people in management to hear, and you can tell me if you agree or not, but I was pretty new. It was my first year. I think it was my first 6 months in an old job, or even my first 3 months. And I went to my manager. We had a one-on-one, and I said, I want to give my best. So I said, how am I doing? Can you speak to my performance a little bit? And the manager said, oh, I don't know. It's too soon to tell. And that's it. and I felt so, after that I was like, wow, I am maybe not doing a good job. And so what I wished would have happened was, it's too soon to tell, but from what I've seen so far, I'm so happy we hired you. Like something like this would at least like make me feel like, good, now I'm motivated to do more, in a positive way. Or this is just one job. Another job, I had a manager again, and I said same thing. I do this. I value feedback a lot, right? So 3 months, 6 months. I said, so what feedback do you have for me? I've been around for 3 months now, 6 months, something like this. How am I doing? And what happened after this was there was an awkward silence for about 45 seconds. And then, I think I need to think about this and answer you after some time to really reflect on your performance. And then we scheduled a follow-up meeting, and it was very intense, of like, we want you to change this and we'd like to see more of that, but also good job. And again, this is not, I don't think this is bad, but there was like a certain flair of awkwardness that didn't sit well with me. And again, in an ideal scenario, I would have hoped for, sort of front loading it with, this is positive, I'm happy you're here, and then like, let's talk about the improvements. But I'm curious if you've, what your take is on this.
I feel you, definitely. And to be fair, I must say sometimes it is difficult to hear feedback, but it's also very difficult to give feedback, right?
Yeah.
So you have to learn and you have to practice it. And it is very important that you do that, to ask for feedback, but also to give feedback. And what I can say, I would always use the big model. I'm not sure if you know that. It's a behavior impact question.
Interesting.
Exactly. So it's just like, and you can build the feedback around always related to these three sections, like what behavior you want to give feedback about, or you want to receive feedback about, right? And then what's the impact of this behavior, and then finish with a question instead of an assumption again, or like that was bad. Well, that's not helpful. And be as explicit as possible. there's also like the sandwich model, I think it's called, like you say something good, then something to improve, then finish with something good. Pros and cons about that, because it can lead to positive toxicity, right?
Yeah.
If you phrase everything as, oh yeah, but everything is wonderful, and then the receiver only hears the positive, and maybe they are not aware of the thing they actually need to improve. So
Yeah.
there's nothing bad about it, right? Funny thing is, and I don't absolutely have no problem with saying that here. Before I became a team lead, I had kind of one-on-ones with a teammate. We were in the same team, and I just asked, hey, because I do want to become a team lead whenever the position opens up, I would like to practice that, like kind of one-on-ones. And that person was very open to it and said, okay, we do that. And we do that still now, like every month.
Wow.
And we give each other feedback, and we have like rooms for improvements, rooms, what should we continue to do? And he gives me the feedback and I give him the feedback. And he once said, like, it would be good, maybe, no, he didn't say it would be good, but he said, maybe one thing to improve would be to learn more about design patterns. And I valued that so much. It was so good because it was spot on, and I really, really valued that. So some other would think, oh yeah, doesn't he trust me? Don't I know enough? No, it was.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really value that. Yeah.
This big framework, the behavior impact question, question. Yeah.
Yes.
Is that the 3 communication framework that you talk about, or is that different?
No, okay. That's a different one. Yeah.
Let's talk about that one. What is this 3 question communication framework? How can we use it?
Time. So everyone is busy, right? And we all are a bunch of friendly people who want to support each other and want to help out. And if someone, especially in a remote world, lots of things happen in written communication. And for example, we use Slack or any other, this precisely is about using Slack or this kind of tools for communication, for day-to-day communication. But you also need to code. You also have some meetings maybe. So you only have that much time per day to react to things that's going on Slack. And so I felt after a time, I felt a bit overwhelmed by all this because I have the urge to help everyone. And this is a problem, a time management problem I needed to address and I wanted to address. So I came up with this 3 question framework, which I wrote about in a blog post on thoughtbot.com. And it's when you don't have time, but you tend to react to any question, no matter if they are important to you, try to get familiar with this one. So there are 3 questions, and you just ask them one after the other. Maybe you just need to answer one question. So the first question is a comment or a message in Slack, for example, directly related to what you are working on. So did you build the features? This person has a question about it. Then you go, if it's no, you don't react, you don't care about it. You just like continue with what you're doing. If it's yes, you go to the next question. And that is if the one who wrote the question or the comment, can they answer it themselves? Because very often I would really like, let me Google that for you. If that's the case, you still don't answer. Also, it's related to your work. But if they can
Right.
answer it on their own, you won't. You continue with your work. And the final question, but if not, so if you are currently, if it's related to your work and they can't answer it themselves, then you go to the third question, and that is, if there's someone else, for example, your pairing buddy, who can also answer this question. If it's yes, you don't answer. And it's not rude to not answer. That's a very misconception, I think. It's not rude. Your time has value. And if you are the first to answer every time, people could, whatever, become lazy because then, oh, Svenja gonna answer that. Svenja gonna answer that. And yes, you're gonna answer that and you're gonna answer that. But then you're just like, in the end, you would burn out.
Yeah.
Because you don't code anymore, because you're just answering all the questions of your colleagues. So that's the framework I came up with, and personally, it helped me a lot.
That's such a great. So the three questions, just to recap, and just to make sure I understand them. One is this directly related to what I'm currently working on? Mm-hmm. Two, is this something that they or a peer can maybe find an answer to with either Google or AI or ChatGPT or something? And three, is it something that another teammate could help them with pairing? And if the answer is yes to any of that, then you just don't answer and focus on your task to really protect yourself and also like maintain your productivity, right? There's a great book by, I believe it's Cal Newport, called Slow Work, where he talks about this. It's like we've become addicted to this like fast feedback loop and the need to respond to something all the time. And so he says we don't actually have to do that. And also for knowledge-based work, so not like physical labor, but cognitive labor, it's probably better to like do work slower and more thoughtfully. So you're not context switching all the time, which can be very taxing on the mind and lead to really worse output. It's kind of like not testing your code, to circle back to the beginning, right? Like if you're context switching all the time, you're probably going to take a shortcut. You're not going to write that test. And your thing is probably not going to work as effectively in various environments as it can. Does that resonate?
Yeah, absolutely. And that fits. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. I think that's a real practical takeaway that I'm going to use because I feel the urge all the time. I'm like you. I want to. I'm a teacher. I speak at conferences and I have most answers to things because guests on this podcast have answered my questions, and now I'm like full of all of these conversations that I know the answer to most things that come up at work, and I'm like, I want to help you. But at the end of the day, I end up not putting the oxygen mask on myself, and then I pass out and I can't help anyone.
Exactly, and that's it. And I love to mentor as well. I love being a team lead, and I love how people grow and improve and be happy and feeling fulfilled. I think that's the most important thing, right? Especially nowadays, especially in tech. I don't care if if I get a fruit basket. I don't care. I care about people. That's for me the most important thing, and about mental health. And you cannot be 100% effective when you care too much. Also, you can't be 100% productive if you don't care at all.
Which is sort of poetic that, and I continue to maintain this. We talked about feedback earlier. For me, every time I give someone feedback, especially if I'm managing them directly, I preface it with like, listen, what I'm about to say in like a grand scheme of things does not matter. It's meaningless. It's vapor. And I make that very clear because sometimes if it's like negative feedback, people can take it really strongly, like as an identity statement. I say, hey, maybe we should have put more thought into this implementation, and they hear you don't have enough attention to detail, which is a very damning statement. It's very condemning, right? And so if I front load that with whatever I'm about to say, take it lightly. This goes pretty well. And it's because if I think back to like something that really upset me when I was a child, for example, I had a pair of binoculars as a boy. I like to like look out. We had a balcony and there was like all kinds of cool things to look at. At some point, I was like 7 years old. These binoculars broke. And for me, this was like the end of my life. I was like, oh my gosh, the whole world is over. There's no point in living. If I think back to that now, many, many years later, I'm like, that really didn't mean much. It did help me sort of recognize that actually binoculars don't matter as much as I thought. And so when I do the feedback thing, I'm like, look, in 15, 20, 30 years, you're probably going to take this and improve, and it's not going to matter. In fact, you'll probably even be thankful for it, probably. So like, let's have a bigger perspective here. And I wonder what your take is on that.
Yes. One thing speaking about how to start giving feedback or asking for feedback, one thing what I always do, because emotions, mood change per day, maybe per hour, whatever. So while I definitely use the big model, I also write it down before I give the feedback. So I always just like behavior, impact question, because for me, feedback is important. And so I want to have it written down, you know? And I always send them a message. I have some feedback for you. When would be a good time to talk about it? How do you want to receive it? Do you want to receive it written, which is perfectly fine? Or do you want to have it in face-to-face? Because some people prefer to read it and then like, thinking about it and then afterwards maybe discussing it, or just like never discuss it, just read it. Others prefer to have a conversation around it. And I had a very, I think that's very important because this might change depending on the day, depending on the hour. I personally always prefer the conversation because when you finish with a question, which you always finish because you use the big model, right? Then it might open up a whole different conversation. And this is so interesting. And it was just like, very often it's just like a misunderstanding in communication. And humans are just like, it's normal that we miscommunicate. It's just like so normal. You just must be aware of it and what leads to this miscommunication. So that's my next focus on, by the way.
is what leads to miscommunication?
There are some German scientists about I am a huge fan of Schulz von Thun and Paul Watzlawick, and
great. So I'm expecting some conference talks about this. Fantastic. Well, I look forward to them. Listen, Svenja, this has been an absolute pleasure to get your insights on Ruby on Rails and the interplay between JavaScript and testing, and to hear your contagious love for regular expressions and leadership. It's just my honor to have you come on this podcast and share all of this with me and the listeners. And on behalf of all of us, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so nice. I was very nervous before, and also very, very excited. And I'm so thankful. Really, it's joy.
Fantastic. Thanks again. Let's do this again soon.
Definitely.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining my discussion with Svenja Schäfer. I hope you enjoyed all of it. I hope you learned a lot about testing and when and how. I hope you learned about team dynamics and how not to get distracted using Svenja's 3-question framework. And finally, I hope you enjoyed me really fumbling around regular expressions and then finally getting it, as Svenja did a masterful job of teaching me. If you're learning from and or enjoying any of this content, I'd invite you to share it on social media. If you're watching this on YouTube, then if you'd subscribe to the channel and maybe like this video, that's a great way to support the podcast without any cost to you, really, besides maybe clicking a like button. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, I'd invite you to leave up to a 5-star review. You know the drill. And also consider sharing this on social media, because all of that does help. It helps also just give me signal that this is worth undertaking because it, as you can imagine, twice a week, 2-hour episodes is somewhat of a labor of love. And I do it because I love it and I love you. At risk of sounding maybe too emotional. So if this is the wrong medium or whatever, you can also make that clear by just not engaging. In any case, thank you for sticking around. Thank you for being a part of the podcast. And most importantly, thank you for your interest in engineering.